Hey everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about soccer. Well, most of you guys call it football. Actually, I want to clear this one up because I have actually had a lot of people comment in the comment section that it's not called soccer, it's called football. And I know, yes, for 95% of the world it is called football. In fact, I agree that it should be called football because it is a game where you primarily use your feet. But you guys have to remember, I'm coming from a country where the biggest sport we also call football, and it is actually a completely different game, American football. I know some of you guys think it's weird that it's called that, but if you actually think about it, it has a lot of similarities to like rugby and soccer and American football. At one point in time, they were all actually the same game, and just like a language, it's something that evolved over time. And you can see this with a lot of the rules that are in American football versus soccer rules. Like many of you may not know, but actually the offsides rule is actually a holdover from when soccer first started way back in the day. You actually couldn't pass the ball forward, and then they eventually changed that rule. Now you can pass forward, but the offsides was actually a holdover rule from the old days where you couldn't pass the ball forward in soccer. And it's very, very similar in American football. Once you pass that original line where you start, you cannot throw the ball forward. And way back in the day, you could never pass the ball forward in American football, but now they have a special position called the quarterback, who if they stay behind that original line, can pass the ball forward. So if you actually go into the history of these two games, they actually used to be, a long time ago, they actually used to be the same sport. And I think that is why it's actually called football, even though you don't use your feet very often. They all kind of evolved from the same thing. But just to keep it clear, I'm going to call it soccer on my channel because I'm an American, and it's just a really, really good way to distinguish between the two. If I say soccer, everybody knows what I'm talking about. If you don't agree with it, or if you do agree with it, at least it's something that I can use that is clear for everybody to understand. Football, if I were to say that in America, everybody would instantly think of American football. NFL, the National Football League, is the biggest sports league actually in the world. It's the most profitable, but obviously soccer is the biggest sport in the world by far. So actually both sports have a lot of merit, but if you go to America and you say football, people are just going to assume you're talking about American football. So I just want to be as clear as possible on my channel. I know I get a lot of hate for calling it soccer, but that's just what we call it in America, and I'm an American, so we're going to stick with that. So now that we've got all of that cleared up, I'd like to talk a little bit about the differences between soccer in America and Sweden. Now, when it comes to the World Cup, which is actually the inspiration for me making this video, the World Cup being right around the corner, I'm super excited for that. But actually, America did not even qualify for the World Cup. America is not really a great soccer nation when you take into account the size and population. A nation of 320 million people should be qualifying for the World Cup. When America is so good at most sports, we usually lead the medal count at the Olympics year after year. But when it comes to the world's biggest sport, America often fails, and we have not had a lot of success with our U.S. men's national team. The women, that's a different story. I think they've won the World Cup like 3 times. So shout out to the U.S. women's team. They're doing a great job. But the men have definitely been lagging behind the rest of the world. Now, Sweden, on the other hand, does really, really well when you consider that they're a nation of about 10 million people, and they have to qualify in a very, very competitive European side of the bracket in order to get to the World Cup. They've got to go up against really tough European competition. So, for example, just to make it to this World Cup, Sweden had to go up against Italy and knock them out. After already going through a really tough group where they knocked out the Netherlands. So Sweden had a really, really tough road to get to the World Cup, and they actually made it. So I think Sweden is actually doing a really, really good job right now. And I think that when you look at the group that Sweden is in, I think they have a really good chance to actually get out of that group. At least I'm hoping so. It is actually a really tough group with Mexico, South Korea, and not to mention the defending champions, Germany. But I think they can probably handle Mexico and South Korea. You definitely can't sleep on those teams, but when you look at the body of work that Sweden has done in the qualifiers, I really think that they can get out of that group. Now, I'm a little bit biased because my family is actually German. For those of you that have watched this channel for a while, you know that my family is originally from Germany. My dad is a German teacher, and so I have always been a huge Germany fan. My family would always watch German soccer games together back home, so we were really, really pumped about the results of the 2014 World Cup when Germany just dominated Brazil in that semifinal. That was one of my best soccer memories ever, and then of course Germany going on to win in overtime against Argentina in the final. That was a very, very memorable World Cup, and Germany being the first European team ever to win a World Cup in South America was also a really, really cool accomplishment. But yeah, this World Cup I'm a little bit split because Germany and Sweden are in the same group. So the dream scenario for me is for both Germany and Sweden to qualify and advance out of that group. And I think there is a really good chance for that to happen. At least that's what I'm hoping for. But when we look at soccer more closely in Sweden versus America, I can really see, even at the youth levels, being a PE teacher and having taught PE in America and in Sweden, it's really, really interesting to me because even the kids that don't play soccer at a high level here in Sweden still have a really good basis of technical skills. When kids have a break time in Sweden at school, they're always playing soccer. They're getting lots of touches on the ball. And I think that's why small European nations can oftentimes do really, really well in these big tournaments, because everybody in these countries just plays soccer all the time. And in America, that's totally different. If you're a good athlete in America, chances are you're going to be playing football or basketball or baseball, because those are the top 3 leagues in America. Those are the leagues that are going to pay the most. So our best athletes oftentimes will choose not to play soccer and go play another sport instead. And you can definitely see at the youth level, kids are not as familiar with soccer. They don't have the same kind of foot skills. If I'm just playing soccer with a random PE class in America, the quality of soccer is going to be really, really low compared to just playing with random kids here in Sweden. The quality is actually much higher, which is really, really interesting, just because it's more part of the DNA of this European culture that the kids play a lot more here in Sweden. Aside from our best athletes going on to play different sports, when you look at the MLS versus some of the top European leagues, there is no promotion and relegation in the MLS, so there's no incentive for those bottom teams to try to fight every single match to stay in. So it's really, really interesting, the dynamics of the American League, because if you're 19th or 20th place in the Swedish League or the Barclays Premier League, you're fighting every single match to try to get points so that your club doesn't get relegated to the second division. Now, there is a wave and a movement in America right now pushing for this relegation promotion system, but I just think with all the money that is at stake in the MLS right now, I'd be really surprised if that ended up happening. Although I do think that would actually be a good thing for American soccer if we had a system that is used similar to what they have in Europe with that promotion and relegation. Another thing to consider why American soccer is lagging behind the rest of the world: think if you're a really, really good soccer player who is coming from America, most good soccer players that graduate from high school around the age of 18 will use their really good soccer skills to get a soccer scholarship and play college soccer. So basically, the best soccer players in America typically go play college soccer, where the level of competition is nowhere near what playing at a European club level against full-fledged adults that play soccer for a living. I mean, college soccer is good competition, but when you compare it to European professionals, there is absolutely no comparison. So when you think of our best soccer talent coming out of the US, they're using their skills to get free college, and they're basically locked into 4 years, some of their prime development years, from the ages of 18, oftentimes up to 23. They're developing at the American college level, which is vastly different than the professionals in Europe, and they come out of the American system at age 23, having never played professional soccer ever before. And when you think of the professionals that are playing in Europe, by the age of 21, oftentimes they already have 2 or 3 years of experience playing in a professional league day in and day out against some of the best competition in the world. Think about what Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, and some of these big stars in Europe, what they had already accomplished by the age of 23. Whereas our top American players at the age of 23 are just now, at that point, getting their first taste of professional soccer, having played college all that time before. One other point to consider why America might be lagging behind in terms of the soccer development is that America is a country where you need a lot of money to play soccer at the highest levels. Now, in Europe, if you're a really, really good soccer player, clubs will be interested in you and bringing you in and giving you scholarships and types of things, maybe even paying you to play for them if you're a good player. In America, it's the exact opposite. If you want to develop with the top players, the top coaches, you have to have money to play in an academy system or play on a top level club team. That costs thousands of dollars a year oftentimes for these American players to develop. And a lot of, take for example, Hispanic kids that grew up in Mexican families that are really, really good at soccer. Sometimes some of the socioeconomics can be limiting for those kids to get the top level training and develop. So if you're not from a wealthy family and you're not playing on a premier level club team, you're really, really going to be behind. Whereas I think in Europe, it's much less a limiting factor. Having a lot of money is not required to develop at the same rate as it is in America. So with that being said, guys, I want to hear your comments on what you have to think. Why is America struggling so much at soccer? Why did they not make the World Cup? And also, what are your thoughts of how Sweden is going to do in this upcoming World Cup? Do you guys think they are going to make it out of the group stages? I really hope they do. I've met some Swedes that think that Sweden is going to make it out of the group, but some people are less optimistic, saying, hey, it's a really tough group. Let's try to be realistic here. It might be really, really tough for Sweden to make it out. So I want to see what you guys have to say as my subscribers. Do you think Sweden has a chance? How far do you think they can make it in this World Cup? And with that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap this video up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.